Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 6 and number 7 of Ultimate Black Panther, written by Brian Edward Hill. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. So with that said, this issue opens in West Africa in a small village on a rainy night. And under the shadow of the moon, we see a cloaked individual making his way toward the home. The home that has a family in need within it. For we see a child lying in sweat and pain with a doctor overlooking him. So with fear in the air, the parents look on in worry, as on the next page we see the doctor tell the family that he could take the child to the hospital, but he doesn't think there is much they can do to save him. Now this was heartbreaking for the family, because their son was facing death. So as the doctor apologized, he informed them that he would try to make it as comfortable as possible to ease the child's pain, as the parents began to cry. Now with that said, a blinding blue light radiated outside of their window, as the home door shot open and Khonshu entered the scene. And as soon as he arrived, he informed the people within that he felt their suffering, so he came to save the boy. And when they asked what he was, Khonshu responds by saying, "I am many things, but tonight I am the hope you seek." So with that statement out there, he tells everyone to be quiet and places his hand on the child's head, and tells him to have faith in him, and within moments, yet another glowing blue light fills the room. Now the light was so bright that it could be seen from outside the home for all to see. And once the job was done, the boy passed out and collapsed back in his bed. And once the child was back asleep, Khonshu went on to say when the boy woke up, he would feel no pain. So with the boy now out of danger, Khonshu turned and faced the onlookers and asked if they too were ready to be awakened to the salvation that was to come. And just like the child before, Khonshu went on to do the same to everyone in the room. For Khonshu convinced people that he was God, and he performed miracles. And by doing that, he is able to build an army of zealots to die for him. And at the bottom of the page, we see Khonshu's forces securing the area. Now what Khonshu is doing is trying to win the hearts and minds of the people by conducting miracles, and by doing that, he was able to create his own myths surrounding himself. But his myth doesn't stop there, for he is also said to have created his own kingdom from the earth itself. Now with that out there, Shuri doubles down and says the people want to believe in his powers and his miracles. Now this pissed the Black Panther off, so he replied to this news by saying, Khonshu's power comes from the new element that he is certain that he doesn't fully understand. So with anger in the Black Panther's heart, he rose from his throne and declared that he would not wage war against the people of Africa, no matter who they follow. Now Shuri didn't see this as a reasonable response, because Shuri clapped back by saying that her brother hoped for peace until their enemy's army was large enough to climb their walls. Now this sparked the Black Panther to question if perhaps the walls were the problem, because in isolation, they have allowed this. Because he believes the people are asking why respect the king who hides behind gigantic walls when a god walks among them. Now for some reason, Shuri found her brother's comment strange and resembles Eric Killmonger's outlook. Now to the Black Panther, that wasn't really a bad thing, because he believes Eric's perspective makes more sense with every sunset. Which is a big deal in Shuri's eyes. After all, she doesn't trust either of them, because she believes that Storm is keeping too many secrets. And to make things worse, Storm is also beautiful, which was something the Black Panther claims he didn't notice. Now Shuri isn't that dumb, because she replied by saying that he should, before Storm's beauty sneaks up on him. Now this pissed him off, because he claps back by saying, neither she nor Okoye has anything to fear from Eric and Storm. For they have come there to follow their laws, and they have fought by his side and saved his life, and most of all earned their place. So with that conversation coming to an end, on the next page, we jump over to the people in question and see both Storm and Killmonger kissing in the air above their bed, and once they were done, Storm dropped him to the bed below, as Eric comments how everything in Wakanda is comfortable. Now this sparked Storm to ask if being comfortable was a bad thing. To which Killmonger states it could be, if he gets too used to it. Now with that comment, Storm replies by saying they have both earned a bed that isn't grass, food that they didn't have to kill, and nights where they both can close their eyes. So with that said, on the next page, we transition to the Temple of Ra, where the two are having a conversation about their next moves. Because of course, the forces of Wakanda will not be silent as they gain power. To which Khonshu replied by saying Wakanda's way is usually through diplomacy, which is a waste of time. So while they do that, they can convert more and more people to follow them. Now what Khonshu stated was nice for him, but Ra was not one who wanted praise, because his main goal was power. and he was completely aware that the power they currently have was just a fragment of the bigger sum, and the forces of Wakanda know where the rest is located. Now Khonshu didn't see this as a major problem because he believed that Wakanda didn't know what it was and where it came from. So for the time being, Khonshu wants to let them keep their faith in their talking panthers as they see their legions grow and the Temple of the Sun expands. Now with that said, Ra tells his brother that he is currently underestimating the forces of Wakanda. Now with that established, we transition over to a mineral refinery in West Africa that was protected by heavily armed forces. And as they stood guard, a dagger came flying out of nowhere and embedded itself into one of the guards' chests as the forces of Khonshu came out of the woods, with their weapons at the ready. So with the element of surprise at their disposal, the armed guards was quickly overran, and before any guard could mount a proper retaliation, one invader launched himself headfirst into the guards and an explosion went off. So with the situation going from bad to worse, the guards were more determined than ever to stop them before they were able to conduct a repeat of what just happened. So before the soldiers were able to do any more harm, the Vibranium shield activated and successfully reflected the enemy attack. Now this right here was good news for the guards, but on the other hand, they were pretty shocked by the turn of events. And at that moment the Black Panther appeared from the shadows and told the guards to fall back, for he was enough to handle the situation. Now this was important, because those guards who were stationed there weren't really on the up and up, and were told by the Black Panther that they should count their blessings for their operation was over. Now following that, out in the distance, we see a figure overlooking the refinery, and after he closes his hand into a fist, the building goes up in flames. And out of the explosion, emerged the Black Panther unharmed and alone. Now following that, Khonshu and the Black Panther stood face to face, and the first thing Khonshu asked was if Wakanda was moving to protect corporations now, to which the Black Panther responded by saying, "Wakanda moves to stop terrorists." And then he went on to say, not only is Khonshu pretending to be a god, but he is also pretending to be an activist as well. Now with that said, Khonshu replied by saying that Wakanda hides behind its walls and its traditions. And by doing that, it lets invaders steal from all the space around them. So because of that, Khonshu claims to be doing what Wakanda should have done generations ago. Because from Khonshu's perspective, there is nothing the Black Panther could actually do to stop him anyway. So with that statement made, the Black Panther sprung into action and attacked Khonshu, and after a quick jab and kick, Khonshu stumbled back and let out a small counter. A counter that puts a little distance between both parties. So with that said, Khonshu turned around and walked away for the battle was on. So with the war on, this issue comes to an end. Now with that out of the way, issue number 7 opened several months later with the forces of the moon rushing the Black Panther. And while that battle is playing out, we get a narration saying Wakandians and Africans are all his people, and he was born to protect them. But yet they aim war at the Black Panther, because they think they're serving a god. So because they are misled, the Black Panther will not take their lives, but he is not above showing them how a king can challenge a god. So with that said, the Black Panther let out a massive burst of energy, for his suit was able to store energy and release it in a wave of power. Now this wave of power would not kill those it hit, but it would stop them. So as the soldiers of the moon lay defeated, the Black Panther thought to himself that Wakanda was at war with the same people they were meant to protect, and the sad part is, it is all the Black Panther's fault. So as the king stands ready for the next wave of enemies, over the horizon a large force rushes his way, and he shouts for his reinforcements, in the form of Storm and Killmonger. And just like that, Killmonger arrives on the battlefield with his cycle as the Panther reminds him not to kill anyone, but instead to just pacify them. So with the orders given, Killmonger followed it, and let out a gigantic sonic wave base attack that crippled the enemy forces without taking a single life. So as the forces of the moon writhed in pain, from above the goddess herself descended down with lightning playing in her eyes as she called for the forces of the wind to lift up each and every member of Khonshu's forces into the air. And while she did that, the Black Panther went on to tell his father that he was commanding powers against the same people he was meant to protect, and to make things worse, he had failed his father, and those who were about to face him. So with that dealt with, the Black Panther tells Killmonger that they have been at this for months and this war needs to end. So with his intentions known, he tells Eric to recon ahead and find the heart of the enemy's power and their weakness. And while he is busy doing that, the king will then destroy the gods. So as the forces of the moon lay defeated, we then transition over to the Black Panther talking to Storm. And during their conversation, we get another narration from the Black Panther asking Matron Amala if it takes a special kind of madness to pretend to be a god. because whoever does that is courting danger, so it is no surprise that Ra and Khonshu want war and is causing suffering. And speaking of suffering, Storm tells the king that he is more kind than his enemies and she hopes he don't come to regret it. Now the reason why that is said is because the Black Panther replied by saying he would not kill those that Wakanda is meant to protect. Now to that statement, Storm went on to say that she imagines that his enemies know that, just like she does, because he grew up in the safe palace in Wakanda as she grew up in the outside world. Now following that, we transition back to the king talking to Matron Amala in the Garden of Bast, and their conversation picks up with the Black Panther saying, Africa will not be torn between two kingdoms, to which the matron states that it's already happening, and he cannot stop what is happening, and he can only master how the war ends. Now with that response, the king asked what would she have him do. Would she have him march on their kingdom with the Dora Milaje, and kill the people who serve them, and watch his people die and take solace in their graves? And to his surprise, the matron said yes. Now she understands that he does not want to see his people die, which is admirable. But that is not his choice to make, but instead theirs. Now to that, the Black Panther went on to say, they serve Wakanda, and Wakanda serves them. So the war won't end with an army. But instead, it would end when they understand the source of their enemy's power. So with that seed planted, the king went on to say he believes that the matron isn't sharing all she knows. For the Vodukhan must have perspectives on this, and he would hate to have to seek it out. Now following that, the matron went on to say that he is looking for certainty, but the Vodukhan embraces faith, and there is a difference between the two. Now that statement prompted the king to reply by saying the matron told him of the substance, the element, and how it can harness psychic powers to break the laws of physics. In fact, Vibranium responds to it, but this element affects life itself. So with the matron back against the wall, she replies by saying, they deal in faith, and in faith, there are more possibilities than in science. Now that right there is the secrets of the gods. So one must ask himself if Vibranium was more than just a metal. So with that food for thought, the king sat back and thought, what if Vibranium had a consciousness and a will of its own? And what if it came from the vast cosmos and was alive like a seed? And what if it is beyond science itself? And what if this living substance was careful to hide its will, while its will was always working in a kingdom where it gave its ancestors the vision to build? So as a consequence, they have become dependent upon it, like a symbiosis. Because like the matron said, are the people of Wakanda certain that they control the Vibranium, or does Wakanda simply serve it, because they are powerful in its grace, but nothing without its strength? Now following that, we fast forward to the Black Panther and Okoye in their bed, talking about the king's meeting with the Vodukhan, which led Okoye to ask if it was even possible for Vibranium to have a will of its own. To which he replies by saying he is the king of Wakanda and not the master of possibilities. And as for Ross and Khonshu's element that they acquired, the king has a theory on it, for Vibranium may have its opposite, descendant, or even its forebearer. But Khonshu understands it in a way they do not. So most likely in his keep he has something that can terraform and enhance life and most likely destroy it. So with that terrifying thought in their heads, Okoye went on to say that the Black Panther has the strongest mind she has ever seen. But see, the king had to admit that his mind is imprisoned by logic and reason, so ultimately Amaka is right, for he needs to think as a god to defeat another god. So with that said, we transition over to the king's next war council, and when we get there the Black Panther as Eric and Okoye to seek out someone who is both mystic and scientist. And once they find them in the world, he would like them to bring them to Wakanda. Now this sparks Eric to ask if he has anyone in mind. To which the Panther responded by saying, if he knew whom was needed then, he wouldn't have asked them both to search for them. Because the king wanted them to chase whispers, hunt rumors, and return someone that is no stranger to mysteries. For they will be treated well here, as they help them understand the nature of everything. Now the king's comment rubbed Eric the wrong way, because he went on to ask if this was an order or a request, because even though he resides in Wakanda, it doesn't mean he kneels to him. So with tension started to rise, the Panther had to rethink of another way to pursue Eric, and he did that by saying he was asking, because he was fluent in the outside world. So with that out there, Storm stated that she wanted to go with Eric because his conscience should be her responsibility. Now with no way to say no, the king had to agree, but asked them to please avoid harming innocent people. So with everyone knowing their parts, the king said they have a kingdom growing around them, and it bends the people of Africa to its will. And because of that, they have turned from Wakanda to a new prophet and its new belief. So the king would remain to remind the gods of their fragility, and it begins tonight. And before he does that, he would need one favor from Storm before she and Eric go off on their quest, and that is for her to join him on the battlefield. Now following that, we transition to the forces of the moon marching civilians in chains as the Black Panther arrives on the scene, walking ominously as the sun starts to set. And once they saw him, they opened a hailstorm of gunfire, to which the king dodged by jumping into the air and telling Storm to lend him her power. And on cue, a burst of lightning hit him and supercharged his suit as he slammed into the ground. And with all the additional stored energy coursing through his suit, the Black Panther dashed straight towards Khonshu's forces and systematically took them all out, one at a time. Like a blur of claws and fury, and in a blink of an eye, all was defeated as the king stood before his people. And in a defiant voice, he asked one of the prisoners to say the name of the man who set them free, to which the man replies by saying the Black Panther. Now this wasn't enough, for the king wanted all of Africa to hear of his deeds. So with that stated, the former prisoners shouted their savior, the Black Panther. And once they all were freed, the Black Panther took the remaining stored energy and launched it directly into the air, high enough that on the last page, we see the two looking on from their temple. Now according to Ra, he suspects that the burst of lightning was the cry of Wakanda. And Khonshu went on to say he has a kingdom built on sleeping power, and once it is awakened, the city will cry with the screams of Wakanda. So with that said, this issue comes to an end. So with that out there, if you want to stay in the loop about any individual storyline, then how about you hop over to the playlist section down below or in the link cards above to get all caught up on the Ultimate Universe. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.